W-A-A-G-E. And they could never find the $100 million that went into that, what's it called? Ponzi scheme. They could never find it. So relating it back to a micro level of how that impacted. I came home. That is the Ponzi scheme that my friends got involved. And so initially, what happened was we had a little group. I came out. The first meeting was just about conflict resolution. But then after the meeting, I started saying, I'll teach you a little bit about investing, how to invest, how to get a return. And then after a couple meetings, they said, could we put a little bit of money into Treasury and let's start? And I said, I don't know, okay, fine. And then we did really well in the beginning. And what happened was a few more people started to come. And at that time, I was meeting once a week in Vancouver. And then a couple more meetings came by, and then it became like about this much of this section right here. And I didn't know most of the people. And that's how it grew. What happened was we had success very quickly. But what I said back then in the beginning is we built up very quickly to $5 million. Very, very quickly. And in those days, I looked at the fundamentals. I saw what was going on in India and China. And this was long before the masses and CNBC and everyone else in the media was always talking about GDP growth in India and China. And we all, within the last 10 years, have really heard about China becoming the next superpower. 10 years ago, we just looked at it as a third world nation in every way. Our perception has certainly changed. You have Lou Dobbs on television every day talking about the unofficial war almost between America and China, it seems like. But what happened was I looked at this trend. I saw back after World War II, all the soldiers returned from Europe, and they went back to various parts throughout the world, and your European and your American and your Canadian soldiers, what they wanted was they wanted a better quality of life. So what happened in those days is the Federal Reserve or the Bank of Canada or the European Central Bank, they started to create much more money supply, much more cash flow. And what they started to do was give out lots of credit. So all these soldiers went out and they started to get things. They made sure they had indoor plumbing, appliances, automobiles. And what we saw was an 18-year commodity bull market cycle. 18 years just moved pretty much straight up. A cycle never moves completely up. It kind of goes something like this. But the trend was up over a period of time. And then what happened was towards the end, there was a lot of mining companies, and they were supplying, for example, far more copper into the market than there was available demand, and there was much more steel being produced than was being consumed. And at the end of it, what we saw was prices began to drop. And at that time, the nail in the coffin was when the Berlin Wall came down. Because the last huge consumer of commodities in those days was, in fact, the military. And when the Berlin Wall came down, what we saw at that point was a 20-year, what's referred to as secular, it means consistent, secular bear market downward in commodity prices. Everything just got so badly beaten up. Most commodities went from using an index of 100, went down to somewhere between 10 and 20 of that original 100 over a 20-year period of time. Now, this relates to everyone who's in the room because I'm up here to show you how to make money for yourself. I'm up here to try and give you a little bit of guidance of what's going on in the world. And a lot of the things, and Rob talked about it at the beginning, you can't grow from 0 to 6,000 members without getting a lot of performance, without constantly making money for people. It just doesn't happen. I don't have what's referred to as a broker-dealer network. A broker-dealer network means a bunch of brokers get out and they end up getting people to get involved and participate in the Freedom Investment Club. It doesn't happen like that. We grow by one happy member at a time. That's how we do it. So what happened was Berlin Wall comes down, and then when I'm over in India and China, I'm just looking, and when I would drive, I didn't drive myself, but when I was driven from Beijing to Jinan, what would happen is I would go, and my driver couldn't speak English, and I couldn't speak Mandarin, so we would just drive, and what I would do to pass the time is I would count cranes. Okay? And when I get to 1,000, I'd stop. But there would be massive growth everywhere. You would go into cities where, and I went back and forth every year, I would go into a city where it'd be all grassland, and 2 years later I would come by, and there would be massive buildings everywhere. Basically, what you look at in China is the equivalent of downtown or all of Las Vegas being completely built with complete infrastructure once a month right now in China. That's what you look at. That is massive amounts of growth. So I got all excited, and I came back and I said to the members, I said, look, what we have to do is we have to be looking at investments in commodities. We are looking at a secular bull market run, upward trend in commodity prices that I believe is going to last for at least 20 years. Because China and India is 2.4 billion people, and that is 30 times larger than when all the soldiers came back after World War II. Wow. That is massive growth.